Welcome back to another retro game review. More role-playing games have been released on consoles and computers alike since the earliest days of 8-bit computing, but only a small number of those games truly stand out as innovative or unique, providing a level of gameplay or story unmatched by its competition. Tales of Symphonia for the Nintendo GameCube is one of those. From the art style, gameplay mechanics, story, and character interaction, the overall presentation stands out from other games that came before it and its contemporaries at the time. Taking inspiration from previous games in the Tales series, as well as inspiration from other franchises like Final Fantasy and Star Ocean, Tales of Symphonia creates an immersive experience with almost no flaws. It's no wonder this game is ranked as one of the best games in the Tales series. The series is a multi-console, multi-generation RPG series created by Namco. The first game, Tales of Fantasia, was first released exclusively in Japan on the Super Famicom, PlayStation, and later would receive an international release on the Game Boy Advance. The world outside of Japan would first become acquainted with Namco's Tales series games with the PlayStation entry, Tales of Destiny. Much like the Final Fantasy series, each Tales game is its own standalone story, not requiring you to have played any previous games in the series, and you can play them in any order that you want. There are a few exceptions though, such as the sequel to Tales of Symphonia on the Nintendo Wii. Symphonia was released in 2003 exclusively at the time for the Nintendo GameCube in North America, with a graphics-enhanced PlayStation 3 and PC version released a decade later. The game turned out to be popular enough to warrant a sequel on the Wii, the first time that Namco would create a direct sequel in the series. The GameCube version comes on 2 discs, since the GameCube disc capacity was only slightly over 1 GB. Tales of Symphonia is the first fully 3D rendered game in the series, and uses a cel-shaded art style very similar to the graphic art in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Zelda Wind Waker came out before Symphonia, but given their release dates, it's likely that Namco didn't know of the planned art style that Nintendo was creating for their newest Legend of Zelda game. This artwork is truly beautiful. The entire game makes use of a very bright and cheerful color palette, something sorely lacking in many games of this era where browns and gray tones dominated the gaming landscape. Character models are also well drawn with lots of detail, both in the in-game engine and the anime cutscenes. Objects in the background are clearly drawn and don't suffer from being unidentifiable due to polygon constraints. Though not as good as later generations of games, the draw distance on the overworld screens is pretty far into the horizon, with almost no pop-in landscape objects near the camera. The only thing I didn't like about the graphics is the filter that Namco used. The center of the screen is sharp and crisp, but blurs towards the outer edges of the screen. The effect looks okay on a consumer CRT through composite video, but on a PVM over component or RGB, and modern flat screens, the effect looks really bad. Almost like double vision, as it uses composite blending to fake a blur filter, much like what Sega did with the mesh screen waterfalls in Sonic to make transparencies. The sound design is also very strong, but there are some limitations. The soundtrack is excellent with many memorable theme songs throughout the game. Many songs are orchestrated, and even though there's some noticeable compression to fit everything on the GameCube discs, it still sounds quite good. Many scenes have voiceovers, and the acting sounds very professional, though not every line in every cutscene is voiced over. I imagine it's due to the limited space on the GameCube discs that's to blame for this. Another thing that bothered me is that sometimes the voiceover is different from the dialogue box, sometimes just being a generic response that gets used multiple times throughout the game, though not quite as often as a game like Skies of Arcadia, where you'll hear Aika say, "That was fun," 2,000 times or more throughout the game. Battles take place in real time, similar to the Star Ocean series. You control a single character of your choice, and you can take up to 4 characters into battle with you. You move freely around the battlefield and have buttons for attack, dodging, blocking, or executing a special attack. Sometimes the 2D plane you move on can make moving towards targets difficult and confusing, and sometimes you can get easily pinned between 2 different enemies when one moves into your plane. You can interrupt the real-time combat to choose magic spells or use items. Item usage has a recharge timer, so you can't spam them, and spells have a casting time. Taking a hit while casting means having to start the spell over again. At least you don't lose any magic points until the spell is successfully cast. While you only control a single character, the 3 other characters are controlled by the AI and executes attack patterns that you can set. It's pretty detailed how you can determine where they will position themselves and what actions they'll take, but it's also a little bit confusing. Each character class has general strats as well as custom ones specific to each character based on their job class, like special healing strategy for Rain. This is my only complaint about the game. The instruction manual and in-game tutorials only give you a brief overview of how all this works and doesn't provide a lot of practical instruction. I found that early in the game, at a time when you don't have a lot of money for restorative items or recipe ingredients, the AI would not work as I intended it, and I'd run out of magic halfway through dungeons. Also, I wasn't understanding tactics to survive combat very well because I was dying a lot. Overall, I didn't feel like I was understanding the combat system at all. About 10 to 15 hours into my 60+ hour adventure, I finally started understanding the combat system. I even spent a lot of time having the AI auto-control every character for me to study what it thinks you're supposed to do. Another thing that's not intuitive is turning off most spells for characters when not in boss battles. This is an issue because if you give tactics orders not to cast spells when under 50% magic remaining, for example, when a character would be slightly above 50%, they'd cast a powerful spell that would drop their magic points to around 20%. Also, when they reach the threshold, they would just stand around and let enemies kill them. I learned that I needed to set multiple tactic types and switch between them on the fly, depending on the current battle situation, much like the system in Final Fantasy XIII if you've ever played that one. Where this game really shines is in the story and the relationships between the playable characters. The game opens up as a rather typical fantasy story. You experience the games through the eyes of Lloyd, a human teenager orphaned as an infant and raised by a dwarf near a small village in the world of Silverant. You attend school in the town and are friends with an elf named Genus, whose older sister Rain is the teacher at your school. You're also friends with Colette, another girl at school whom you are infatuated with. Colette is known as the Chosen One, a child of angels who is destined to be the savior of the world through the journey of regeneration. Shortly after the game starts, the Tower of Mana appears, signifying that the time of regeneration is at hand. It turns out that the world of Silverant is in a constant state of decline for more than 800 years, with progressively lower crop harvests along with famine and disease becoming more prevalent. When the tower appears, the Chosen One must go on this journey to rejuvenate the world. This legend of the Chosen One is passed down by the Church of Martel, whom has been prepping Colette for this journey her entire life. You begin this journey with Colette, Rain, Genus, and a mysterious bodyguard named Kratos, and you make a vow to protect Colette from any harm along the journey. Unbeknownst to you at the time, Colette must sacrifice her life in the regeneration process as she transforms into an angel to heal the world. As you complete the journey of regeneration, you start to suspect something about this ritual is not right, and maybe something sinister is going on. From the guidance and orders of the angel claimed to be Colette's father, to the assassination attempts made against Colette to prevent the rejuvenation, things don't seem to be adding up. To make matters worse, the more of the ritual is complete, the more of Colette's humanity is taken away from her. First the sense of touch, then taste, voice, sight, and even all feeling whatsoever. Lloyd begins questioning this divine plan and eventually learns the sinister truth. It turns out that there are two worlds in constant struggle with each other, Silverant and Tetheala. These worlds are opposites of one another, and to regenerate Silverant, Tetheala must be sent into decline. Once Silverant is fully regenerated, Tetheala will become barren and lifeless, as Silverant is currently becoming. The game puts you in a situation where Lloyd must choose whether to save his own world at the expense of another. The people of Tetheala will suffer as their world dies in order for Silverant to be saved. Lloyd makes a vow to save both worlds, and stop the cycle of one world leeching off the other. To complicate matters further, the angels, or false angels as they've come to know them, have their own agenda that they've enacted through the cycle of constant regeneration and decline. Lloyd and his party will have to stop them as well in order to save everyone on both worlds. One of the great things about this game is the interaction with your characters outside of the direct plot. As you travel through the two worlds, characters in your party will strike up conversations, sometimes about the current situation, and other times just to chat. This allows you to get to know these characters more intimately and makes you care about them a lot more. Additionally, you'll sometimes have the option to respond to their dialogue, and the choices will impact how the characters like you and how they'll interact with you throughout the game. Additionally, some characters won't like you if you get too friendly with another character that they have a rivalry with. They'll also become more friendly or antagonistic based on plot choices that you make. How much characters relate to you and your reputation with them even impacts a major plot point in the story, and will determine which characters will stick by you through your journey. There's no way to keep every character who joins your party. No matter what, some characters will leave or turn against you depending on who you become friends with and what choices you make throughout the journey. I really like this concept. The game poses some difficult moral questions that have no clear right or wrong answers. You simply have to choose the answer that best fits your moral code or the morals you've chose to stick by for your playthrough. Since decisions you make have these moral implications, you ultimately have to live with the consequences of your actions. Since there's no perfect solution that will appease everybody on both worlds, or even within your own party, consisting of members from each world, and even other dimensions. Other aspects of the game outside of the main plot are some character-specific subplots, searching the world for recipes which can heal you or give you status bonuses after battles, naming all the dogs in the world with Colette, hitting on every woman in the world with Zelos, and unlocking new job titles for characters which influence their stat development as they level up. Another really great thing in this game is the journal. It keeps track of all the plot points from each event throughout the game. That way, if you take a break for a little while, it's pretty easy to get back up to speed when you start up again. Overall, I really enjoyed this game, and I'm glad that I stuck with it even though I was very frustrated with combat in the early parts of the game. There was a minimal amount of level grinding and money farming, so I got to really focus on the story. The fact that I had to make some hard choices in the game in regards to my relationship to certain characters made me feel more invested in the story, since dialogue choices actually mattered in determining major parts of the story as well as the ending. One unfortunate thing is that the sequel uses characters from this game, meaning that you could potentially have a falling out with a character or even be forced to kill a character that's supposed to canonically live through the game. This game deserves to be counted among some of the greatest jRPGs, so check this one out if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments what you think about this game, if you've played it, or any of the other Tales games. I have several others in my collection that I'll eventually get to, including Tales of Vesperia, Tales of Symphonia, Dawn of the New World, and Tales of Arise. I'm looking forward to getting to these games. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next video.